Anyway, let's crack on. So I'm going to be talking to you today, hopefully with some visual aids, about ensuring how your house always wins. And it's about embracing a casino mindset. And the reason I say that is casinos are normally pretty good and pretty well known for handling risk when it comes to it. While I'm bluffing my way through, I'm just going to sit on a slide that would normally fly over, which is everybody, has their who am I slides, and then they spend 5 minutes talking about who they are. LinkedIn, you'll find me if you like me. If you don't like me, don't. It's as simple as that, really, to be honest with you. I'm going to start talking. I've got, which you'll see eventually, I've only got 3 corporate slides to talk about. The rest is just some pretty pictures, to be honest with you. One of the advantages of working at Rapid7 is that, unlike many vendors that are effectively sales houses, we're actually a threat research and a threat labs environment that is surrounded by a sales function. So our threat capabilities and our research and our laboratories actually directly inform the products that we make. Now, to say that our environments these days are complex and difficult to defend would be an understatement, I think. The fact that attackers are attacking us, in ways that we haven't seen before, over and over, AI, blah, blah, blah. But in our research, basically our attack intelligence reports and our incident response data, because we gather billions of events, across our platforms, we found that 43% of the observed incidents that we gathered, the victim had no MFA in place. 43%. We were talking at lunch today on the table I was sat, and we were talking about the basics and how actually vendors seem to love talking about. I need that. Shit. I know, right? This is all gone wrong. But we were talking about how, vendors like to sell you some really complex stuff, and we're talking about post-quantum cryptography and all that sort of thing, and how we can defend against that. And the reason I think for that is that the vendors have actually given up on trying to sell you things that will address the basics, because we still haven't fixed the basics. So let's try and sell you some stuff that's going to, address the really fancy stuff that's going to keep the board happy, and things like that. So, so actually, as a result, we end up with a lot of these basics not being covered. Could you describe my next slide to me, please? Or I'll take this. I'll take a cake. Right, I'm just going to do the rest of it like this. Is that all right? Brian, you said you were a professional. I'll take whatever colour it comes in. I don't mind. Okay, so you'll have to excuse. Oh, it's down there as well. Okay, you are professional. That's all right. So, and also, one of the other elements here, 53%, that bottom left one, of mass compromise events began with a 0-day attack. People are holding on to these 0 days. These attackers, they're holding on to them. They're sharing them. They're selling them. So 53% of the mass compromise events that we monitored, that we're involved in, were because of 0 days. It's quite scary, actually, when you can't defend against, the 0 days, but then again, you could defend against that 43% of MFAs, of attacks against where there's no MFA. And attackers are always on, right? Here's some clear stats. So, and this stat was mentioned this morning. I think it was actually by Dan. I think the average dwell time for an attack is 6 months. So to put that into context, come Easter Sunday, you might find that your organization has had someone sitting in your network from today. So that's quite a period of time. So an average dwell time of 6 months is quite scary. It takes 64 days for you to then recover from it. on average. 64 days. That's the median. Not even, some of the longer term ones. Some of them take years to recover. But 64 days. The moment when somebody gets into your environment, be that with even just basic credentials, it takes them on average 70 minutes to get root access to your environment. I mean, these are not long periods of time. And if you think security through obscurity is a potential thing as well, it's okay. I've got cloud workloads. They only spin up for an hour or two at a time. Not a problem at all. And then we destroy them. Well, in our honeypots, we did a honeypot exercise. We found that it was down to 3 seconds before a honeypot was put online and then aggressively scanned for vulnerabilities. We did have somebody then respond to us and say, well, I found on mine it was 2 seconds. But we're nothing if not upbrinkmanship on ourselves here. So why the casino? Why the casino? Well, one, we all love casinos. Two, the pictures that they always come up with are always very good. But casinos understand risk, right? They're one of these industries that really get it. I mean, you're coming in and offering to give them free money, effectively. That's effectively what it is. So how does a casino always win? Why are they always successful? Well, there's 6 things I want to cover in the next 15 minutes, so it won't take long, really. So there's 6 things I want to cover. And the first one is, ultimately, casinos conduct risk assessments regularly. Well, this is all obvious stuff, right? Casinos know the odds. They know the odds of every single game they play, every single environment. They monitor those odds. They monitor the players, and we're going to come on to monitoring later. But they understand risk implicitly as regards how they're going to control the games and how much money they hand out. Just to give this into perspective, who here thinks bears are dangerous? I mean, if you're not putting your hand up, you're an idiot for a start. But yeah, bears are dangerous. That paw there is the size of a face. Right? It's about this big. Right? Now, what kills more people in the US? I have to caveat that. What kills more people in the US than bears every year? Nope. It's these evil little motherfuckers. Right? Babies, toddlers kill more people than bears do in the US by a massive amount. A massive amount. Now, the orange there is the number of toddler shootings. That's why I had to caveat it with the US. Toddler shootings. But at least a third of that orange actually results in death. The little numbers that you can barely see on the top, including 2019, where there was 0 death by bears. That's brown and black bears, just to say, because there is a site called Bear Vault that actually manages and controls all this. Now, we all know the reason for this, right? But babies are cute and you just want to yeah, them all up. And you don't want to do that with a bear unless it's called Paddington and wears a duffel coat. But that one's not going to take your face off. And that's because we've still got this little reptilian part of our brain that tells us that, bears are dangerous because they will eat us. But actually, walking around with a loaded handgun in a bag and having a small toddler around with us is nothing. It also brings into light their Second Amendment about the right to bear arms, which I think we should flick around and, give them the right to arm bears, and then we'll see what happens. Then we'll really see what happens. But all that to say is risk is not a thing that humans are particularly good at. And so therefore we need to actually start to understand that, go and seek out some, additional support from other people, whoever that might be, to actually help us truly understand it. And there's various frameworks, and we'll come to that in a minute. The second part, and this section has the 2 corporate slides, so we will drift over those quite quickly. Establish operational risk management processes. So it's one thing to understand risk management. It's another thing to actually operationalize it and make sure it works really well. And by that I mean, casinos don't just know that stuff might happen at the tables. They are watching every single table all the time with experts monitoring every single element of the gameplay throughout. And the reason for that is there's a vast volume of data that they've got to incorporate as a result of this. Now, to flick this over to the cyber side of things, we've got a real problem with this as well ourselves. So just one of the many risk areas that we have concerns with is vulnerability prioritization, for instance. So, they call it, looking for a needle in a haystack. So let's remove a bunch of the hay around us so we can find the needle. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's really more about finding a needle in a needle stack, because the actual vulnerabilities are often, a vulnerability is also a feature half the time, or there's a vulnerability in a valid dual use tool that's being incorporated. So it's not always easy. You might be able to find a CVE, but that CVE is actually vital to a part of your operation. And so we need to actually operationalize the fact that we don't just look at single factors, i.e. CVSS scores. We need to actually bring around a lot of enrichment around that CVSS score. So looking at it from what's actually happening in, who's the attacker that's using it at the time, what other threat intelligence is it? Is this actually an active threat at the moment? Is it in my industry? Is it in my geography? Is it aimed at the platforms that I'm using? What are the attackers currently looking at? I mean, we heard today, M&S, Harrods, Co-op, obviously bit of a theme going on there. Therefore, retailers, after the third one, kind of stood up and started to take a bit more notice. We then need to, bring in that context. Do we have to worry about this particular CVSS because we've got other controls, or because, actually it's not a business critical system and it's behind about 17 different layers of defense, etc. And then you can start to normalize your scores. So you're taking out, you're not only reducing the hay from your stack, what you're doing is brightly coloring the needles that you really need to look at before you get anywhere. Number 3, is implementing customer data security measures. So everybody, to one extent or another, has customer data. Doesn't matter what it is. And that's very much crown jewels, because isn't it part of the playbook now where people, the first statement when something's gone wrong is, well, obviously, we take security very seriously. No customer data or no credit card information was stolen, right? That's part of the playbook, right? But you need to be very focused on it. We shouldn't actually have to be saying those sorts of things. So we know in the casino world, we also know where they didn't quite get it right, with the old fish tank attack, which was, it seems to be a little bit of an anomaly. There haven't been many more fish tank attacks, but where the attackers got in to a casino via the industrial control system on their massive fish tank. It's a big story. Everybody I'm sure knows it. Because who thinks to attack a fish tank apart from our last speaker? I mean, I can imagine he's probably got an aqua lung to use just for that particular job. But actually understanding that it doesn't matter, how well you think you're protecting. There are going to be other ways of getting to your data. And it doesn't matter as well if you think, well, all my customer data, it's handled by a third party. It's handled by the cloud. I've dealt with it. It's other people's security, because they do a better job than me. And you're right. They absolutely do. The problem is the term lifting and shifting. And very often when it comes to, oh my God, I've got all this customer data on my tin inside my 4 walls. I need to protect it better. I'm going to stick it up into the cloud because actually, that's got, they've told, I've read the PDFs. It's got all sorts of security in place. It's going to be great. But as it says here, this is one of the official slides. Lifting and shifting your mess just gives you a cloudier mess, which is absolutely right. I prefer my version of this, which is, when it comes to lift and shift, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one F in lift and shift. Because if you are lifting, a platform that you already own and that you're already concerned about, and then just dropping it into the cloud, you're just magnifying the same challenges that you had before in your own legacy environment as you do in the cloud environment. And so it's not just a straightforward question of, I'm going to increase security by making it someone else's problem. And it could be that, that third party that you're giving it to, you might not even know it's necessarily in a cloud. They've just looked after it, right? It's exactly the same principle. Number 4, which is abide by legal and regulatory standards. Now, when it comes to the casinos, we all know where they started from, right? We've seen the Robert De Niro films. We know exactly how it happened and how it works. And actually, the regulatory standards of the day of casinos, certainly in the US, were the auditors tended to carry hammers, as far as I can make out. And any sort of, indiscretions, were generally dealt with by hammers and said knuckles of whoever had the, indiscretions. Unfortunately, obviously times changed. Even the gangsters realized that the regulations and the legal authorities, there was probably only so much space in the desert they could put any more bodies, so they realized they probably had to go a little bit more legit anyway. And so by following, the legal and regulatory standards was actually the way of the future for them. And for us, it's exactly the same, and it should be fairly clear, right? And I hate to particularly pick out, Joseph here, but, as CISOs, as heads of security, we should absolutely be following all of the regulatory, the legal frameworks, etc. Because really, if you don't do illegal shit, you're probably going to be doing okay. If you're going to follow, the regulations in your area, if you're going to make sure that, what you do and the decisions you make are ethical and moral, if you couldn't look at one of your customers in the eye and tell them exactly what you do with the data that they have given you without feeling a sense of shame, you're probably doing a good job. You're probably doing the right thing, not just for your customers, but also for yourselves. You're protecting that data in the right way by observing those legal and regulatory standards. But what framework we should use? Well, it's whatever you want. Here in Europe, obviously, I say here in Europe, for me, over in the UK, it almost feels like we can do whatever we want now, but NIS2, all of the other ones, etc. But there's other frameworks, ISO 27001, NIST, etc. It doesn't matter what you follow. It could even be, if you're particularly smart, your own set of policies, if you don't want to particularly follow something, and you don't have to, as long as they are well written. But you follow something and you stay the right side of it, and you don't say, this particular policy is aspirational. We'll get to that later. You actually do stick to it. But sticking to a regulatory framework is something that's going to make your lives so much easier and actually reduce that overall view of risk. Cross-training the entire staff to catch issues earlier. Well, this is exactly, again, what casinos do. All of the croupiers, all of the floor staff, everybody is trained to look out for certain types of activity, to look out for the types of, players that might be doing certain things and winning big when they shouldn't really be winning big, or, are casually tapping their trousers every now and then, or feeling something to see if there's a signal. Everybody is trained to observe. And I think that, again, we've spoke about the human element today. Instilling that sense of security culture is absolutely vital. It's one of the hardest things you can do is to instill a culture of any kind, let alone a security culture. But it's absolutely vital because it's self-policing, it's self-supporting. If you can get to the point where people are saying, oh, don't do that, do this. Why? Because that's how we do it in this company. Not because security said so and it's it's dumb as shit and I don't know why we do it, etc. Because, frankly, if you can get people to do things without mentioning the word security, you've won. Hence why culture eats strategy for breakfast. Everybody says it's Peter Drucker, but it's also been associated to Steve Jobs and Jack Welch. So I don't know who it was. If somebody could tell me, but Google is not your friend in this particular case. So really focus on ensuring that everybody in the organization is involved in this. And the final one, constantly analyze potential risks to understand it. And that's, again, I talked about the monitoring, but they are constantly understanding what's going on. What are the new tools, tricks and techniques, and processes that people are using to cheat the casinos? What are what kind of new radio technology is being used? How are people counting cards? Or how can you stop people from counting cards but still remain on the right side of how you should operate a casino? That kind of monitoring is being kept up on a regular basis. And we need to do the same. And there's 5 things that we can do to do that. First off is threat intelligence and monitoring. We're at the stage now where high quality, high fidelity threat intelligence can actually inform real-time actions in your environment, to the point where, because you know that there is a particular 0-day being exploited by a particular gang in your geography aimed at your industry and at platforms that you're using, and it's 3 a.m. on a Saturday when this intelligence comes through, you could potentially get to the point where you're automatically patching production systems. Because frankly, it's better to be on the phone to the software vendor of that production system on a Sunday morning than it is the attackers trying to negotiate some kind of ransomware. It's probably easier to roll back a patch than it would be to decrypt a whole bunch of data or bring back a platform online without forking out millions of pounds or euros in payments. Vulnerability management, kind of an obvious one, especially coming from Rapid7, so we'll move over that one. Threat hunting, actively going out and looking for these things. Think about that 6-month dwell time. Perhaps they did get through a defense and they did get in. Well, if all you've got is, singular tripwires that only trigger when somebody's getting in and somebody's managed to get past that, well, they're in for the next 6 months, right? If they're sitting quietly and they do it carefully. Actively going out and hunting those threats within your environment is how you reduce any potential dwell time down to, even minutes in some cases. Automation, ML and AI, we all know this. AI now, attackers are attacking us at machine speed. There's no doubt about it. They haven't got a general counsel that says, let's do AI next year once we've understood what's going on. They're just doing it. They're just cracking on and using AI. It allows them to scale, and it allows them to allows their reach to expand certainly into countries that they weren't able to before. So they're attacking at machine speed, and we're defending at the speed of Dara in the SOC at 3 a.m. And Dara's a bit pissed off because he's had a terrible day at home and his dog's sick, and he's inundated with work. And suddenly a whole flood of stuff comes in, and it's all too late. It's all happened. So we need to adopt these things, in my humble opinion, whole talking of its own right. And finally, incident response planning. If you're a new CISO, the first thing you do when you get to a job is not try and work out what's on your perimeter or what your threat surface looks like. It's find your incident plan. Because at 9:05, if something goes wrong, you need to know what you're doing about it. And if you don't have an incident plan, that's the very first thing you do. And then you test it and retest it, etc. And a lot of people will forget this. We all like the flashy lights. We all like the attack surface analogies, etc. They don't always get it right, though. So Black Swans, Nicholas Nassim Taleb's book about things that have happened that were unforeseen at the time, but in hindsight were bleeding obvious that were going to happen. Many casinos, he interviewed some security officers at casinos. I've got about 4 examples. I'll give you one for brevity. One, for instance, brand new casino was being built. A construction worker was fired for being drunk on site. 3 months later, they were going to open, and a security guard happened to be walking past one of the supporting pillars and found a bunch of plastic explosives wrapped around it, put in there by said disgruntled fired construction worker who still had access to the site and still had access to high-level explosives. I guess they avoided it. I guess they addressed it, but it was a very, very close call. So they do get it wrong. There's no doubt about it. And there's no shame in getting it wrong. But they were doing everything that they could, everything that they felt they could up to that point. So in summary, 6 things very quickly. And if you think the chip value has anything to do with the importance, then come and see me afterwards. We need to talk. So first off, understand risk. Conduct your risk assessments regularly. Get it straight in your head. 2, address those risks. Establish an operational risk management process that is not only just going to say, this is where our risks are, but actually continually do something about it. Just because you've accepted a risk today doesn't mean you need to accept it tomorrow. It's very easy, especially if you're being audited, to just say, oh, we've accepted the risk. Don't be that CISO. Don't lift and shift. Don't try and make your security problems someone else's problems. Make sure you're understanding the fundamentals of what you're doing as you are moving from one environment to another. Do no evil. Didn't Google once say do no evil? Now look at them. Abide by legal and regulatory standards at all times. It's a great place to start. That's your baseline, not something to aim for, but something you start from. Adopt a security culture, so cross-training your entire staff to support all of your endeavours. And finally, proactive threat hunting, being more active in actually getting out there to see what can possibly harm you. Those are my 6 tips. If you take one of those things away today, you're welcome. And that's all I ask of you. I will not be available for questions right now, but I'll be around today and later. And thank you very much for your time and patience.